When God is happy with a church that doesn't grow. When God is happy with a church that doesn't grow. God wants more people in his kingdom. He does not want people to go to hell. He wants them to go to heaven. So of course, he wants the local church to grow, because it makes sense that as more people become born again, which God wants, then local churches will grow with those added to his kingdom. But when is God happy with a church that doesn't grow? That doesn't grow in number. He is happy when that church does not compromise what he wants that church to say. Now, church, God adds growth in his kingdom, but he only adds it in the sense that he is the supplier of life to the person who is added to his kingdom. That person must choose to enter his kingdom by that life. God does not override their will. So, when God adds growth by number, he is not just making it happen. He needs the cooperation of a person's will to enter his kingdom. So, if a local church is saying what God wants it to say, doing what God wants it to do, and it doesn't grow by number, God is completely happy with that. Because God does not make people become Christians and force them into the local church. God does not do that. They have to choose. And if they choose not to, then God accepts that. And accordingly accepts the church that does not grow, because in that local area, people are choosing not to become Christians. People are choosing not to continue as Christians. God doesn't just make it happen. People have to cooperate. God doesn't force growth. What he does is he uses that local church to persuade people to become Christians and to continue in Christianity. But, church, please see this. If people choose not to do that, it's not the local church's fault. It's the people's fault. And God is completely happy with that church, even though it doesn't grow in number. So don't be condemned, little church. Don't be ashamed when you are not large in number, for God is with the local church as it says and does what God wants it to say and do, even though it doesn't grow in number. For God does not force anyone to join it. What does Luke 12:32 say? Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Let me show you something from the scriptures. Part of Romans 16:5 says, likewise, greet the church that is in their house. Where was the church according to Romans 16:5? It was in a house. Therefore, how big could that church be? Colossians 4:15 says, greet the brethren who are in Laodicea and Nymphas and the church that is in his house. Where was the church according to Colossians 4:15? In a house. Therefore, how big could that church be? So, church, God is happy with a small church. And God is happy with a church that doesn't grow, as long as it is saying what God wants it to say and doing what God wants it to do. I hope you can see these things. God doesn't force people to join the local church or to stay at the local church. God doesn't overrule people's wills. So, little church, keep saying what God wants you to say and keep doing what God wants you to do. And if you are a little flock, so be it. And if you are the number of those who would fit into a house church, so be it. Keep saying what God wants you to say and keep doing what God wants you to do.